This week on Between Two Beers, we've put together a best of compilation. In this episode, we revisit some of our best clips from sporting episodes across the year. Guests in this one include Ian Foster, Dame Noeline, Clayton McMillan, Gordy Walker, Sarah Walker, no relation, Steve Williams, Marius Vanderpoel, Dr. Joe Brown, Gilbert Enoka, Ryan Fox and Sean Fitzpatrick. It's a hell of a list and there's so much gold in this one. This episode is brought to you by our proud sponsors TAB. If you've got a hunch, download the app today and get your bet on. Seamus and I are also stoked to now be in partnership and dressed by Barkers. Check out their range at barkersonline.co.nz. In episode 245, we talked to Dame Noeline about her upbringing and her difficult relationship with her father and how it shaped her into the person she is today.
I want to go back to the start and sort of talk about the foundations and your background and where you came from. Can you tell us about your parents and perhaps sort of what parts of them show up in you today?
Actually, we were Jeez, you guys have been reading my mind because you must have been in my house. I was actually talking to this yesterday to my husband, and why we were talking this was actually about one of our daughters and where she is at the moment. And he said to me, "Oh, you're like your father," and I said, "No, I'm actually not like my father. I feel like I'm more like my mother." So my mother is, I would say, very patient. Very lovely, I'd say, never drink. She doesn't drink. She's actually passed now. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, was a nurse. Family is massive for her, so loving, and would take anybody. And so we've always had people come into our house, every Tom, Dick and Harry, and you get fed and all the rest of it. She came through the days of being a housewife and, in the holidays, you go fruit picking and the whole family go and all the rest of it. So she was a very quiet one in our family, but very loving and supportive of the family, the glue of our family. My dad is a wee bit different, very strong on tribal matters, I would say, past as well, strong in Ngāpuhi lands, and he worked in prison. He went to Vietnam. He was also the culture advisor to, at that time, Jenny Shipley. So he was very forthright, and just through actually our talks I was having with hubby, he was sort of saying, we got to, I do have more, I probably have more 80% of my mother, and my poor dad, and then probably 20% of dad when shit hits the fan. Or when things don't go, or when you've got to stand up and you've got to talk. And there's moments that where I don't question myself. My hubby said to me yesterday as well, he goes, "Geez, you can bloody talk." Because he's always going, "Oh, can you get off the road like this?" He goes, "God, you can talk." And he goes, you got to fast, if a question's asked, you can go back really fast, fast-witted. And I said, "Oh, yeah, that's my dad." So I would say there's the makeup of me, and then probably a 5% of myself is in between. But yeah, very strong with my mother's, probably naturally my traits.
So interesting that you say that, because what you described is exactly what Esther has described in terms of some of those traits that came through, and you can see both of them from your parents, which is really interesting.
Isn't it? Wow.
There's different levels of depth that you can go into in conversation, right? And we're here for it, but I want you to sort of come to whatever level you want to come to. But with your dad, I've sort of been reading up about it, what you said, Vietnam War vet, advisor to the government, face of the Waitangi Day protest, a strong figure.
Yeah.
What was your relationship like with him growing up in that childhood as the youngest of 4 or 5? Youngest of 5, and what was that sort of dynamic
well, we
like?
found out when he passed that we've actually got more brothers and sisters.
Really?
Yeah. So, which we sort of knew, or somebody else knew in our family. So we probably ended up got about 9 in total, at which I'm the youngest. Dad came through that generation, I suppose, of hard work, of farmers, of having 12 kids or whatever in their family, so they're that tough generation. And I think as well through his experience, whether with war, was probably one of the things that really came out to me, and what that does for a lot of soldiers when they do come back to New Zealand. I had actually mentioned this in another podcast, and it was only just because somebody asked me, and it was never something that I've sort of put out there, but growing up, we did have a bit of violence in our house, and I was the one being the youngest and not really knowing much. That was always the person that not necessarily put in the room, but was that person that would console Dad and calm him down. So I think I was the luckiest where I didn't experience physicality, but a lot of my other, well, definitely my mum and my other sisters and brothers did. So I don't have a lot of times recollection of that hurt. But, for all of that stuff, we loved it. We love our dad because there was always those moments when you need him, or he was always there for all of us, but just had to go through his own, excuse my language, shit to get out the other end as well for a family. And I think at that time as well, alcohol plays a big part in people's lives, whether they're trying to, get through their own mental issues. And of course, being in war is bloody shit, so they do these things to help themselves, but at the time, they do a lot of things to family and the harm that happens in that space. So as I say, I think through my character and my softness, and coming from my mother, I was the one that actually calmed the situation a lot. And I think that also links to why I actually don't think I know why my voice has probably taken me a bit long to come out and be comfortable to be able to say something. And I've always said, like when you're in a room and you're bloody shit scared, sometimes you can't say nothing, and you hear things. So, I don't take anything away from our family and love my mum and dad to bits.
Thank you for sharing it. It's so insightful when you're navigating difficult relationships in a family dynamic, and then we zoom out and look at how successful you've been. Like, it's hard not to draw a bow between those skills you kind of developed in childhood.
I know. And that's why we always talk about identity, and vulnerability of people. And sometimes you don't know what people's stories are. So that's where that humility, the whanaungatanga, the manaakitanga needs to come in, and that's why it's not separate in my mind as to just because you're an athlete, you're a person, So I think I actually know because of my upbringing, because of the stuff that I've gone through myself. That's why I am like I am, but also able to really be open about my gaps, and it's sweet as. It's not something that you can measure or evidence. It's just part of how it is.
And there'll be a lot of people listening that have been in that same situation and maybe haven't had the ability to connect the dots in later life, and then maybe it's still causing them some issues now. So talking to these sort of things is really valuable as well.
Yeah, I believe so. I think sometimes, you can hold these things. But as I say, no one's ever asked me. We always talk about it behind the scenes as a family. And then next minute we're laughing, like of all the good things. And I think that's family dynamics, But at the end, you only got one family, we only got one team, we only got one person at certain roles, and, how can we make it the best for everybody? But know that we don't leave the person behind.
You've referenced Ngāpuhi already and talked a little bit just then about a couple of Te Ao Māori principles as well, but is that something that guided you through your life, or something that you've come into in later life?
Yeah, I've always had people around us growing up. The reo is not part of, my kids have all come through kore and things like that, and speaking it, they always say, oh God, you speak the wrong way or something, double tongues or whatever. But I know enough to understand, and it's quite an interesting topic in itself. You have a lot of people that are coming through who have the reo, which is amazing and beautiful. But, also I've been brought up with the old folks and people telling you what to do and not to do, and the respect in and around that, so it's sort of a lot of different worlds that are starting to come together and what's true, so I think it's an interesting topic to talk about. But when you dive into the te ao Māori and as I say, the principles, it fits teams in my mind, and it fits teams around people, yeah.
And then in that childhood, where was sport? Was it a focal point for you growing up, or where did it sort of sit?
Yeah, sport was in our community. It was in our family right from a youngster. Athletics was my first sport.
Hurdler?
And I did hurdle and sprint and 400 metres, 200 metres. But it was actually Dad that got me into running. We'd get on the field and he'll race me and beat me and all the rest of it. But I remember one clear thing that he said to me. He said, oh, you're lazy. And I was only about 9 at that time, and he said to me, oh, you're lazy. And I thought, oh, you bastard. So I went for this run, and 5Ks where we lived, and I busted my boiler, man. Like, I got sick afterwards. Like, I was sick for the whole week. And I thought, right, I'll teach you. But he always comes up with these things, like you're lazy, or why are you doing things? If you're not going to do it properly, don't do it. He always say, my mum, there was a few times where my mum was my coach, and I'll go at her, and then he'll say, you will remember this when she passes. He says these little things, and maybe how I've, or he'll say, when you get out there, you go and dominate. And maybe now that I'm reflecting on this, some of this stuff has actually come out in how I communicate, because it's a challenge as well. But it's a thing that either you do something about it, or you take the words that he says. In my mind, nah.
I forgot to tell you this, Niles. This is going to be an incredibly reflective process.
Yeah,
therapy session.
You'll need a lay down and a couple of days off. It'll be like that 5K run in Taupo. She's off for the rest of the week, guys.
Had enough.
In episode 205, we sat down with former Chiefs coach Clayton McMillan. He talked to us about how he changed the culture and rebuilt the Chiefs in 12 months after taking over as head coach.
Let's link up to 2021. So in 2020, Warren Gatland's Chiefs played 8 and lost 8. And then the next year, you come in as interim coach. Well, Gats is away with the Lions. And with that same playing group, you played 8, won 5, one of the standout teams in the competition, and made it to the final against the Crusaders. What a transition. Like, what's happened? Like, how have you changed that same group of players, and what have you done when you've come in?
It's a good question, because I think the 8 losses in a row were a lot more was attributed to those than I think was really sort of justified. I mean, you lose 8 games and you lose 8 games, but a lot of them were by really narrow margins and could easily have been wins. But again, we're in the results-driven business, and so a lot was made of that. I had the good fortune of being basically a fly on the wall in the Chiefs environment while Gats was coaching the Chiefs through that period. Not in every day, but in enough to be able to see all of the really good work that was going on. And I knew I was going into the role in the interim capacity, so I was looking for little avenues around, where can I add value? What's happening in this environment that perhaps could be modified or changed? Where can I add influence? And I certainly saw all of the good stuff, and I picked up a couple of ideas. And one of the ideas, I think, was that there was a little bit of a lack of identity. So one thing that the Chiefs have never lacked for is an identity, and it was probably really at its strongest when in the Dave Rennie, Wayne Smith era, where they did a lot of work, with Ora Kihi, our local cultural advisor, around connecting to this region, to Waikato Tainui, and all of the surrounding areas, and how the stories from the region can be utilised in a team environment and bring some real purpose to what the team did. And through no fault of anybody's, that had kind of been lost a little bit through players, coaches, the people that have been big drivers of it moving on, players, coaches, until really only a couple of players when I come into the team that were part of that environment were left there. One of them being Sam Kane, who by his own admission said, look, Tonkom, we want this to continue. This is a big part of who we are, but I'm not the right person to do it. I can't do it. And so I saw that as a space that I was pretty comfortable in. So I spoke to a lot of ex-players. I spoke to a lot of coaches. I spoke to a lot of people, get a lot of information and says, okay, we've got to try and bring this back, but we've got to bring it back and not do it the same as before. We've got to make it our own. So when I came into the Chiefs, that was a big part of what I did. It was actually nothing to do with the rugby. We had good rugby players and we had good coaches. We just needed to stand for something a bit bigger. We needed a higher purpose, and that's the whole, bringing Chiefs mana to life, and then creating the framework for us to hold, to some standards and some values to live by daily that were going to ultimately help us get the on-field and off-field outcomes that we desired. And a lot of that was sort of again around some accountability. So one of the things that stood out to me in the year when I came and I was fly on the wall was that everyone thought that the culture was great. Everyone thought we had good players and they were tight. But I didn't find that there was a whole lot of accountability on their part. And in the end of year review, the players literally did shred a lot of the people in the organisation to shreds. And I just sort of stood up at the beginning of my first meeting at the Chiefs in 2021 and said, look, fellas, you're aware that I said in the reviews, and I really applaud your bravery, your courage for being so open and honest. Like, clearly things are not as you want them to be, but you've got to accept some responsibility for these results as well. And one thing we're going to make really clear is that I'm not going to be standing here in 12 months and have an NDA review and have you, tear me or any of the staff to shreds in the same manner. That's not a threat. That's just what I'm suggesting here is we actually need to grow. We need to build from this experience. We need to be men. We need to find a space where we trust each other enough that we can speak freely without fear of persecution or taking things personally, in the interests of actually growing as a rugby team. And so, we created forums and established some new values and behaviours that we could hold ourselves accountable to, and we still do to this day.
Were you surprised at how effective it was so quickly?
I always had a sense that, it had worked before, and it had worked before, and we just needed to revive it and make it theirs, and make this new group understand that there was an identity, there's a whakapapa in the club, a really strong one and a successful one. But we couldn't just reinvent the wheel. We needed to connect and make it theirs. So it was different but same. And I just felt that there was real buy-in, and it was easy to get buy-in because we'd done the homework to understand the direction we wanted to go and how we were going to get there. And because there was an appetite for change. Like when you lose 8 games in a row, you start to question everything. You start to look under rocks for solutions, and I think they were always there. We had good players. The cattle were there. We just needed to, know where north was and then start heading there.
There's a weird dynamic at play here too, right? Because Gats is still the coach, and you're coming in, and I'm assuming it's all with his sort of blessing, but he's still coming back, and then you got to sort of figure out how it works when you've created this new culture which has been so successful and everyone's bought into it. and then figure out how he plays in it. Was that a difficult time just with figuring out what that looks like?
Yes and no. Like I went over to the Chiefs fully aware that I was going in an interim capacity. I didn't actually have any guarantees of staying at the Chiefs beyond the 12 months. So, I was fully expecting that I'd just go over there and then after 12 months I'd get exited, or maybe if I did a good job, I might have the opportunity to stay on as an assistant coach. And I was really, and after sort of a preseason, I think they probably saw enough that I would stay on as an assistant coach when Gets come back. Which I ended up signing, and I was fully prepared to do that, and I was excited about the opportunity to get to be mentored and work alongside one of the world's best, most experienced coaches. And he is a quality human. Like Warren Gatland's one of top draw, and as I said before, it wasn't all his fault that that the team didn't went through a bad patch, and it wasn't all me, why we managed to turn that around. Like, it was a collective effort. And when we started to get some success and Cats come back from overseas, there were some conversations that went on at sort of, with the CEO and at board level and around the players and coaching staff around the world. What's this going to look like now? Because we feel like we're on this trajectory. But Cats, again, just being the quality human that he was, just pretty much just put that to rest straight away, coming and said, I can see all the good work that's going on. I think that Clayton should continue to be the head coach, and I'm happy to assist in whatever capacity the group and the organisation feels I can add value. So that brought about the sort of the creation of the director of rugby role, and again I still had the benefit then of sort of being the head coach and leading the program, but still being able to bounce ideas off Gets, which is
what a ride for you. What an acknowledgement of. Your coaching, that, like you say, Warren Gatland, one of the greatest of all time, has come and sort of said, this is the right man to drive this forward based on what you'd brought in across 12 months.
Yeah, really, really humbling, I obviously loved doing the job, but I never coveted Gats's job. Like, again, I want to make it really clear that I would have been super happy to just continue, but again, I'm just humbled and grateful that everyone in the organisation recognised that something was, there was a bit of a movement and a movement of positive change, and to stay on that trajectory, that potentially that was the best solution, and that's what happened.
So you have the meeting at the start of the season. Are you comfortable with sharing some of the changes or some of the things that were put in place that were easy to do?
Yeah. We just, people talk about culture, and culture to me in its simplest form is just the way that we do things around here. Like, you go into any organisation, it's just a way that you do things, and the Chiefs have certainly got a way that we do things, and you've been into our environment, you've seen how humble things are, and so we that's a part of who we are and why we do what we do. But it was actually going through a process of collectively agreeing on what these values were going to be, because you go into any rugby environment or you go into any organisation, and inevitably they'll have, some values written on the wall or on a flag or, on their website, and that's all good and well. There's some awesome ones, but really your culture is defined by your ability to actually live and breathe those on a daily basis. And so, and I don't believe that you will get people to do that unless they have been part of the process around what are we actually agreeing to live by. And so we talked about some rituals. So what are the rituals that are really important in this organisation? One of them is haka, one of them is waiata, a whatanua. So whatanua gate, it's at FMG Stadium. There's stories around that. So we ensure that our jerseys are unique. They tell a story, are deeply connected to this region. Don't just put this jersey on. It's not just a bit of cotton. It's got a story to tell, and you're a big part of it, and you're going to help bring the story to life. So, those are rituals that we agreed on were really important, and every year we will remind ourselves around why they're important. expectations. So I talked about the challenges between players and coaches and how they viewed the world, particularly when things were under pressure. So we come up with I got the players to say, well, you tell me how you want me to coach you. You tell me and the rest of the coaches what you need to see for you to get to the end of the year and be comfortable that we've done the job that you expect us to do. And equally, we'll do the same of you. So ours is really simple. We just said to the players, mindset, skill set, system. Okay, so from a mindset point of view, we say no compromise on effort and attitude. So when you turn up here, come with a good attitude and give 100% effort every time you come. The skill set was be committed to growing your skill set as a rugby player. And the system was to understand that there is no system without you in the system. So nail your shit, understand what we need you to do in each aspect of this game, and just be committed to nailing your shit. Don't worry about the guy next to you. Don't worry about he'll do his job. You just worry about doing your job. So that's all we asked the players to do. Players gave us a little bit more feedback. So theirs were alignment. So have clear areas of responsibility, but also be aligned in your thinking, but have clear areas of responsibility. So they wanted to know that if I want to know a question about the attack, I want to go to the attack coach or the D coach or the line-out coach. I don't want to be out on the rugby field and having two coaches having conflicting discussions out on the field. To me, that's not alignment. To them, that's not alignment. So it's okay that you have disagreements and challenge, but do that behind closed doors. And when you come out on the rugby field, absolute alignment. Yep, sweet. Okay. Next one was around detail. So bring high levels of detail to your area of expertise. So we've got people ask a lot of questions now around, why do you have so many coaches? It's because there's a demand for detail. And the margins in the game are so small that often the winning and losing can be in that detail. So we have a line-out coach, a scrum coach, a kick strategy coach, a phase attack coach, a strike coach, a head coach, we've got a lot of skills coaches. So, and a lot of that's been driven by narrowing your portfolio, but bringing a high level of detail. So being really intimately knowledgeable, in the tactical part of your portfolio. So they want to see that from us. Feedback, they wanted feedback that was honest, timely, and factual. What was the other one? Consistency was the big one. So we want coaches to be consistent in their behaviour, irrespective of performance outcomes. So what they're basically saying is, Doc, you're a little bit of a grumpy bastard, but we can live with that if you are consistently grumpy, but because we know that's you're being authentic. If you come in and you're a little bit over friendly or you're not your normal self, that puts up a few, what the hell's going on here? Like what's going on? Equally, if I'm really happy or if I'm a really happy guy most of the time and then I come in and I'm angry, you've got thunder written all over my face, people feel like they have to walk around on eggshells, not being consistent in my behavior. So it's basically a challenge to say, whatever you choose to be, however you are, what's your authentic self, just be that person. And so, we will do things. So there's about 4 or 5 things, and I've articulated most of them, I think. The other one was just celebrating our success. So when we win, personally or collectively, we want to celebrate our successes, and that can come in lots of different forms. And so people will probably say, that's all good. That's just words on a wall again. But so how do you bring that to life? So there will be times unsolicited where I turn up to work and we have our meetings in the morning. So I just walk in and just go, okay, need some feedback on how the coaching group's going. Might take 5 minutes, might take 20 minutes, but we're going back in the room, in the coach's office. When you're ready, come knock on the door, be prepared to give us some feedback. And that's quite, that's putting yourself in a really vulnerable position, because these blokes generally won't hold back. Like, we've created an environment where you can speak freely. So we'll go into the coach's office, and some days we might be sitting in there for 2 minutes and dunk, 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 come out. Guys are doing a great job. Really happy with the way you're going. Keep doing what you're doing. We're happy. Other days you go in there in 5 minutes, 10 minutes passes, 15 minutes, and that's when the coaches start, oh, fuck, what are they going to come out with, you know? You start getting your heckles up and then go out, and we literally just stand there like, you know, jury and executioner, you know, just stand there and receive the feedback, and they always do it in a really positive way. And I can't recall us ever, you know, being hit with something that was really gutting, but they'll give us some feedback, you know, they'll say, you know, there's been a couple of instances when we've been out on the field, we haven't been clear, we walked off the field, we've still been unclear. You two are giving conflicting messages, you need to sort it out. And then we'll go away and we'll discuss that. We always make sure we just receive the information, even though sometimes there might be some context around what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing, and they're just unaware of it. But we just receive the information, go back and say we're committed to come back with some answers, and that's what we do.
In episode 221, we were joined by former All Blacks coach Ian Foster. This was a really cool one for us. He'd just released a book and he'd decided to do one exclusive interview to promote it, and he decided to come and join us on Between Two Beers. So we sat down with him for 2 hours in our Hamilton studio and we uncovered it all. It was insightful and wise, and just a real pinch me moment for both Seamus and I. And the clip we've chosen to present is him talking about what really happened in South Africa behind closed doors.
So the question after the Irish series was he going to get fired? And you were probably as much in the dark as anyone after reading the book. But it was the continuation of this breakdown in your relationship with New Zealand rugby. You write about Mark Robinson and Chris Lendrum coming to your house for a chat, them asking what changes you're going to make. And you're saying, well, I didn't know if I was going to be one of the changes, so I wasn't going to do anything until you'd communicated it to me. And I actually want to bring in Beauden Barrett's voice here, because this is the start of some of the senior All Blacks that, like we spoke about at the start, really sort of add some depth to the book. He writes, when we lost back-to-back games at home to Ireland, Fozzie was the easiest one to have a crack at. It was about now that rumours were circulating amongst the players that the New Zealand rugby was considering change. We knew that as players we could help support Fozzie by playing well, but we didn't do that in the series. The only other way we could show our support was by telling him and backing him up in the media space, by saying we believe in him and his team. That was all we could do at the time, because I think the public sensed change was coming, and it was just a matter of when. The public was demanding that, as well as our bosses. I'm not sure if I've ever felt a bigger disconnect between the organisation and the All Blacks. Like, man, that's a statement. Can you tell us about the relationship at the time and what was happening?
Well, the relationship was, you know, they have a job to do. And we have a job to do, and it's times that, you know, we hadn't performed to the levels we wanted to perform during that Irish series, so we have to own that as a team, and I've got to own that as a coach. So I put myself in a vulnerable position because of that, but then it's then it's up to the organisation to decide how they're going to do it. Whereas, and for me, I felt they created a them and us type thing rather than an us thing. So it wasn't a matter of, and the use of the words after the Irish series meant that everyone knew something was going to happen, and you can't use the words unacceptable and then say that you're still great mates. So, you know, they took it was almost like an HR process to it, and I could see that, and so clearly I wasn't going to get sacked straight away, but the next couple of games, which just happened to be away tests in South Africa, we're going to define that. But in the meantime, my angle was, and I remember it was 3 or 4 days, it was before we were assembling to get ready to go to South Africa, and I didn't really know where I was going to get on the plane, but I was at home. I don't think I was great company for my wife and my family, and getting all sorts of calls coming here, there, and everywhere, but I didn't really know what was going on. So for me, whilst NZR sort of decided to figure out how they were going to do a review, because they said they were going to do a 3 or 4 day review with players, and I thought, well, for me personally, I'll go straight to them and ask them. So I just basically made some calls to Sam Cane and a couple of leaders and said, righty-ho, I need you guys to meet, have a chat, and tomorrow morning tell me what I need to hear. And I said, if the noise is too much for this team, then I'll go. And so you just need to tell me where you think we are at as a group. And so, because we were all disappointed. And so the next morning I sat down with Sam Cane. He told me what the verdict was, that we needed to make a few changes in the group. We needed to sort a few things out in the game. So, you know, I had a horrible decision to make a couple of changes to assistant coaches who are great men, but it just wasn't clearly, the connection wasn't as strong as it needed to be with the team. And so I kind of took control of that and made those calls myself. And so it was an interesting time period. It certainly wasn't, there's a lot happening there that you probably wouldn't follow a normal process with, but it is what it is. And so, but my verdict was, I was always about, what did the team think? So I was more interested in their views rather than NZR views, and they had to do what they had to do. And ultimately we put together a crew that jumped on a plane and went to South Africa, you know, and I seem to remember I had to stand up in front of a media thing at the Auckland airport, and so that was an intriguing media conference. But I really believed in the group, and I kind of felt like, oh wow, this hurts, and I know everyone's after me, but as long as the group were willing to roll their sleeves up and work together, I felt, well, I'm sticking at it, and so that's how that went.
You referenced early in the conversation that the sleepless night before the first session training Dan Carter and Ma'anonu. What was the night like after you'd called Sam Cane and said, give me the feedback in the morning about whether you essentially want me to continue in the job or not?
Pretty good. You know, like it was a tough time, the whole thing, but tough on the players too. And because remember, they'd lost a test match as well, and they were hurting. And I still remember thinking, okay, but I trusted them. And for me, you don't want to coach a team if you haven't got the shit. And because then it's everything's too hard then. And so for me, it was all about, okay, if I've got the shed and they believe in what we're doing and they want to fight for it, because we're not going to get back up the mountain unless everyone wants to roll their sleeves up and fight together. So we had to do that. And so that was okay. And I also clearly remember a phone call out of the blue from Artie, and remember walking down the hallway and, g'day mate. And we didn't have a lot of phone calls, Artie and I, and he said, how you going? And I said, good. He said, nah, how are you going? And I said, oh, not great. This is tough. And he just told me that he loved me, and he said, oh, you're our coach. So just get on with it, you know? And so those sort of things are powerful and make you want to fight for it. And so I did.
Those conversations with John Plumtree and Brad Moore, like you say, men you respect, you love, you rate them as coaches, that they had to go for the reasons. Does that sit in the pit of your stomach, those calls? Do you act as soon as you know, do you do it straight away, or like how did that look?
Oh, they sit in the pit of your stomach, all right, still do, you know, because good men worked hard, went through the whole 2020, 2021 period, which was a tough time to coach. You know, they had to go through the same experiences that we all did. So horrible part of the job. But ultimately you've got to make what you believe are the right decisions for the team. And I felt and the team needed some change. The debate was, well, should I have been the change? And am I saving myself by throwing assistants under the bus? And you're never going to change people's minds on that. But ultimately, for me, it was around talking to the players and thinking, oh, what do we need to go forward? Because it's all about this team being the best, and that's what we were driving. So had to make those calls, hated them, and still hate them.
You do get on the plane, and this South Africa series is a doozy. Lose the first test 10-26, but played really well. Played really well. And I want to read what you say in the book to sort of like frame the second test. You say, No one outside the team was ever going to buy into the narrative that we had any chance to win the second test to be played a week later at Ellis Park, Johannesburg. And when you consider the facts, the media and the public were right to have written us off. This was a powerful Springboks team playing at their spiritual home. We had lost 5 of our last 6 tests and just axed 2 assistant coaches. We'd scored only 1 try in a Mombella, and that came in the 77th minute, and after the box had been reduced to 14 men, which suggested our attack wasn't flowing as we needed to. Nothing had changed in the sense that my task was the same it has always been, to prepare the team for this big game as well as I could. I certainly wasn't thinking, how do I save my job? So believe it or not, it really was business as usual. And my only goal that week was to get a performance out of the team that we could all be proud of. What happened beyond that was out of my control. So in the background of this, New Zealand Rugby had been talking to Razor. You knew Joe Schmidt had been approached about joining him. You say you couldn't have felt any more like a dead man walking. And you have this game that you don't know, even if you win, you don't know it's going to be enough. What's that like? What's that? Yeah, take us there.
Yeah, look, it was the whole 2 weeks was surreal in many ways, but and someone in my management team actually reminded me recently, because I kind of forgot about this, but they said that one thing we loved about the Johannesburg week was is that I had a management meeting on the Sunday, and I got the whole group in there, and basically, because everyone was, because remember, this is just not my job. This is about 20 odd people working for the All Blacks, and so they've got careers too, and their careers often hinge on who the head coach is, and I remember saying to them, I got reminded, but now I do remember, I said, look, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to have a job after this test, win or lose. But I said, I really don't know. But I said, but there's one thing that I do know, is that we're currently coaching the All Blacks, and this is the best job in the world. And so whatever happens tomorrow will happen tomorrow. But this week, let's just really enjoy this week. And so our focus was on just wanted our group to enjoy a test week, and yes, there was massive pressure. Like a couple from NZRU, including the CEO, turned up, spent a week with us that whole week, which they never had before. So you knew the pressure was on and everything was going on. And to be fair, when I went back to my room each day and shut the door, I was probably a slightly different Ian Foster than what I was when I was out, because I'm not immune to the feeling of pressure and how that goes. But I knew the only way you're going to win a test match is if you actually really enjoy your week, and that's how we tried to work that test week. And so lots were happening, but the flip side of it, with all the pressure going on and all the media and everyone was painting the picture. Clearly, I think the media had been sort of briefed that things were going to happen, so a lot more people came on that trip than normal. Because when there's blood in the water, the sharks do look around, and that's normal. But for us, I really tried to lead from a perspective, I just want to enjoy this week, and ironically, I still remember walking up to the box at Ellis Park before that test, and I sat there, and again, I just got excited like a little kid watching the All Blacks, and that's kind of how I always wanted to feel as a coach. And I did that day.
And you win.
And we won.
35-23. After the final whistle, you write about being alone, having a little period alone in the dressing room, and Aaron Smith comes and sits next to you, and the emotion just all pours out.
Yeah, look, after a test, I generally go back to the shed, because I put my iPad down in my box. See, I do use an iPad rather than a piece of paper and pen now. And so I did that, and I was the only one in the shed, and then I'd normally go down onto the field, but it was then that it hit me, really. I kind of thought, and I don't know whether it hit me that's it, or I wasn't sitting there feeling that's it or there, but I do remember sitting thinking, like, all the pressure of the week sort of came out for me, and I just sat there, and And I teared up a little bit, and it's the second time I've said that on that podcast, so I sound like I cry a lot. But
that's all right.
But I certainly teared up a little bit, and it was like the pressure just came out. And I remember thinking, oh well, if that's it, the heck of a way to go, and that's kind of how I felt. And I remember Aaron coming in, and he didn't say a word. We just sat down there, and I looked across after a few minutes, and he had a few tears, and he just turned at me and said, "You know why we did that? It was for you." And I thought, oh, right. So that didn't help my emotional state.
I want to bring Aaron's words in too to sort of expand. He said, "The hardest thing for me as a player who's been coached by Fozzie for so long was seeing how much he was carrying, but he remained so stoic and so positive. All the messaging coming from outside the team was that this would be his last campaign. It was well publicised. We all knew the writing was on the wall. But Foz said he was going to focus on nothing other than delivering this week and next, and what will be, will be. Every time he fronted us in the team meetings in South Africa, you wouldn't have known. It was crazy. I was thinking, how is he so strong and so mentally tough to be so focused on just 3 games? And the other part is, so Sam Cane and the leadership group are all behind you now. So you win the game, they all go and see Robbo and basically say you can't do what you're thinking of doing. Like, the team is behind them. Fozzie has the greatest chance of us doing well at the World Cup next year. That's just got to fill you with so much strength.
Yep, definitely. Like, it's because it's one of those times that everyone knows. Like Sam was amazing, like Sam and Artie and Bodie and all those guys. But I remember Sam coming up to me after the test. In fact, I got a photo of my phone of Sam and Artie and Sammy Whitelock talking in the corridors. It's quite an intriguing thing. But their concern, from what I gather, was that I was going to resign after that test. And I don't know what they'd been told before that game and all that sort of stuff. And so Sam's main concern was, you're not going to resign, are you? And I said to Sam, I can't. I promise you I won't resign. And I said, I can't resign after what I've just seen you guys do. And I never intended to resign, by the way. But that was obviously their fear. And they said, well, surely you're safe now. And I said, look, I don't know. I've got no control over that. And I said, so he said, well, what can we do? I said, well, I don't know. I said, that's not really, I just want you to enjoy the test match. But he wanted to drive some messaging. So what happened after that was nothing to do with me. And I actually deliberately stepped out of that space. And the fact that they wanted to have a yak with NZR after that game, that was their call, their choice. I still today do not know what exactly was said in that room, and I've never asked them. That's their business.
In episode 210, we talked to Gordy Walker about how special it was for the K4 team to win gold in Paris. The episode with Gordy was a real special one. We decided to leave the K4 stories towards the end, and once we got into it, we realised we needed to keep digging deeper, and we ended up talking for about 45 minutes on it because it was so good. This is a part of that K4 chat, but if you enjoy this, go back and listen to the full thing, because Gordy Walker, he doesn't speak much, but when he does, it is gold.
Yeah, like there was some really, really tough times. So we, like I said, we went away for 16 weeks, and the first 8 weeks of that, I would say, are the hardest 8 weeks of my life. And there's some of those days, maybe not the hardest days, but they're definitely up there. And they were tough work. But I'm not gonna butcher the story, but there's an awesome book called Good to Great, and in the Good to Great book, there's a chapter about confronting the brutal facts, and there's this little story, and he tells a story about this guy called Admiral Stockdale. It's called the Stockdale Paradox, and you can read up about it. All your listeners should do it. It's an amazing, just even this one chapter. And he talks about the Stockdale Paradox, and it's basically, his thesis is that he was a prisoner of war, and he survived it, and he reckoned the reason that he survived it was because he did 2 things. One is he confronted the brutal facts, which are, I'm not getting out before Christmas, I'm going to get tortured, what have you. But he never stopped holding hope that he was going to get out. So he confronted the brutal facts, which can you imagine like how hard they are? But he just stayed. He just knew he just stayed in hope. I'm going to get out of this, and so it wasn't that extreme. But the main message was that I knew it was really hard, but I just knew that we could win, and I knew that if we did what we could do and we got out of our own way, I knew that we could win, and I knew that the winning would have been as a chance. The other thing I just knew was that this is a chance in a lifetime. Like, I don't know how long Lisa's going to be around, and you guys and her, you make a good team. So it was just me just being super diligent to the fact that I'm just not letting this go for the team. And so there were a lot of times where I was like, my job here is to make sure I keep us in this optimistic, hopeful mindset that we're going there, guys. As hard as it is, we're going there, and we're going to keep hope alive, you know. So there were hard times, and that kind of the Stockdale paradox to me captures that 8 weeks that it was hard, but I never lost hope.
Yeah, what was it? If you don't mind, what was it? Why was that first 8 weeks so hard?
Well, the first, I think a lot of it was just, it was because at that moment in time, it hit everybody how hard the 3 gold medals was going to be. The pressure does funny things to people. So it was pressure, mainly pressure. And so pressure taps into fear, and we got into fear. And you know, it becomes a contagion, right? So if one of us is in fear in this room in this moment, you know, another person might pick it up, and then next thing you know, we're all in fear, right? And Lisa had set a massive task, and she's got to win 3. We're all trying to win 3, but she's got to go out there and do it. You know, she's in the front of the K4, front of the K2. And then she lost that race to Amy in the first World Cup, like really close. And so that, I think we were already a little challenged leading into that moment, and then that moment made it harder. And then she lost again. So now we're in some, you know, she hadn't really lost. So new land for us. And it wasn't so much the losing, it was more the pressure that we were thinking about for the future moments. And then I wouldn't necessarily say that she's the leader. They're all leading things in different ways, but when the person who you know is kind of your strongest is most challenged, it's really hard for the rest of the team. So just a whole lot of like challenge and people understanding how to be themselves in a really, really tough environment when you're away from home. And I knew that this is a bit of a bad one, but I knew that the last thing we had to do at the World Cups, so the finishing point for the World Cups needed to be kind of a loss or a bad thing. I knew that needed to be the thing that we left with. As much as that's a bit of a bad way to have to approach it, I knew that if we had that, that's way more motivational than, not motivational, but you suddenly lose your moorings, you know, when you win everything, and you don't really know the truth, and you can't know the truth. You can't attach to it. As much as you think, I'm going to pretend I lost, you didn't. You know, so you don't know the feelings. Like, we wouldn't have known those feelings. So I think going through that was essential. I mean, as hard as it was essential for us being the team that we were in the week of the Olympics, which was everything that they needed to be.
Did that feel different, that week of the Olympics?
Yeah, like I think I felt like we were becoming who we wanted to be as we led in, and then we got to. But man, it's a fine line, eh? You know, you're on and you're off really quickly, and the Olympics is a funny place. You know, like I often think about it's like mountaineering. It's like, you know, when people are mountaineering, they go above 8,000 meters and things change there, eh? That's the Olympics.
Some idiot in the cheeseburger. McDonald's eating a million cheeseburgers.
He's got it in there.
Yeah, so people lose their moorings, and I think that what happened at the games was I drove to Paris from Italy, and the team flew. So I had to drive the boats. I drove there. They flew, and then I thought, this is going to be interesting, you know, because when they flew, they landed, and then they went to the village, and then you get presented with your you know, your big suitcase with all your uniform, and it's very Olympic-y, you know, and the rings and all that sort of stuff, and I was like, what's going to happen? You know, I knew it was going to be risky, but I knew we had to go through that as well. So then I drove, so I didn't have that experience. I met up with him, and I could tell we'd got a bit splintered. We did a wee session, and we got back, and that's when I felt like we needed to get back to where we needed to be. And it was fine that we were there, because it helped us to navigate back to a place of strength. But I sort of said to them, I don't think I said that had happened, but that I knew that there were three things I said that we needed to put our energy into for this week, and then they were exactly like you said. They were that team once we acknowledged that.
Man, this is captivating. Like, there's so much, that the public don't know. There's so much. Like, it's so good that you've been able to explain it in this detail, because you've taken us all on this journey. Like, far out. It's so powerful. What? So at the other end, like after you've won that third gold, what is that? Is that pour out of you in emotion? Like, what does that look like with you and the team?
Yeah, I think the K4, when we won the K4, that was the first time. Like, that was a really emotional experience. Like, I don't think I've cried that many times in my life. Well, not that many times in recent memory, but did that day. You know, when the team crossed the line, I was like, you know, just it wasn't like it just happened, you know, and it was in the sense that I just got overcome with the feeling of what we'd accomplished. Because, you know, I guess it wasn't lost on me the size of the task, and it wasn't lost on me the work that they did to get to that point. So that was the first time. But I'd also obviously been to a few more Olympics, and I'd been to the Rio when Lisa won a gold in the 200, and then she had to turn around and race again in the 500. And I knew that, you know, you just climbed Everest, or there's a mountain called K2, and I think more than 50% of people get to the top on the way down die. And I sort of had that mentality, like, wow, we just won the K4, and if, you know, our biggest job now is to get down off the mountain. Don't acknowledge that we haven't been to the mountain, but, you know, we need to get down off the mountain. I've been through all of this, and it's a freaking hard thing to do, but we're going back up. And I was watching the Germans, and they were celebrating, like, and I was like, okay, this is a good sign. Like, I think they thought they'd won. Well, no, them coming second was like winning, and the celebrations on the podium were like a unbelievable sight. Like, there was three teams on there, 4 athletes from each team, and every one of them was so happy. It was like, you know, a rare thing to see an Olympic podium where everyone is so ecstatic. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is good, because they're our main competition. And I thought, right, okay, that's a good challenge. If we can be the team that embraces this, celebrates this, and then puts it away and then moves on to the next one, there's a chance here we can be, you know, better than that. So, yeah, that was the first moment, was like experiencing that, but being mindful that we have 2 more jobs to do. And
in your toolkit, have you prepared strategies? Yeah. You mentioned earlier in the podcast about you might have 10 different things ready to pull out of that particular moment. So you're, on one hand, celebrating, crying, tears of joy, but on how quickly do you snap into, right, now we play this card? Yeah. Like, I think only because I think if that was the first medal that I had been a part of and winning, I wouldn't have been able to be the right person for the team for the next 2 days. I probably would have been better to get out of there. But I knew that, and even for me, I knew that, like, it was hard for me to keep the team disciplined to doing the things that they needed to do, the team around the team and the team in the team. But they, you know, but we knew, we sort of named it. I said this, I did say, look, it's really hard when you win a gold medal. Trust me, it's very hard when you win a gold medal to not get swept up in everything. Like, it's you know, like, there's only 300 of them handed out, 330. Like, it's a very rare thing. And then in the team, the energy of the team, and then the family, you know, there's like, I don't know, there's 100 family members there, and suddenly you're on this magic carpet ride you never signed up for. And on paper, it's the most difficult one that you've knocked off first. Yeah, that's right. And so that was another thing why I put so much energy into the K4, because it was going to be the hardest. But I knew it was like the first domino. I was like, man, I wouldn't have said I put 80% into that, but it was a lot into that, because I knew you can't win 3 gold medals if your first one's silver. So I was like, man, if we get the first domino, I reckon that's the big one. And then the next one, and then, you know, it was a mentality anyway. So, yeah, just helping. I had a few strategies that I thought of that were going to be helpful for the team, but one of the big ones is just really allowing people space to be able to talk to how they're feeling in this moment, you know. And then we had a really good chat with Lisa and Alicia the next morning, where
I'd say they were more nervous before the K2 than they were before the K4, and it was really good for them to share that with one another, give some breathing room to that, and then once they got that out, they're like, right, okay, let's go and do it then. And, that was just, that race was out the gate.
In episode 232, we talked to Sarah Walker about how she overcame her fears through broken bones and injuries in BMX.
I don't want to leave DG land quite yet before we move on, because that was such a brilliant insight. Like, that was so cool. Are there any other little nuggets that spring to mind?
Yeah, so like I guess to cover why I got emotional hearing that was because there's so many jumps where like I knew that my body was capable, but my mind was like basically going like, what are you doing? You could hurt yourself doing this. And I would have to, I guess, visualize, like close my eyes and visualize myself like riding down the start hill, pushing through the bottom, taking off, flying through the air and landing successfully. And a lot of time it would be like, I don't believe that I can do it. And it'd be like, okay, try again. Close my eyes, pedal down the hill, push through the bottom, take off through the air, land. Okay, I can kind of believe it a little bit more now. And I would do it over and over until I got to the point where it was like, close my eyes, pedal down the hill, push through, take off, fly through air and land, and be like, yep, I believe it. And then I'd immediately go because it would be like, I like have to trust that. Yeah. There were times where I would close my eyes, pedal down the hill, push to the bottom, take off, fly through the air and crash. I'd be like, okay, thanks, brain. Don't need that right now. Close my eyes, pedal down the hill, blah, 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 crash again. Brain, come on, work with me here. Close my eyes, pedal down the hill, jump, crash. Jump, crash, jump, crash. My brain would just like figure out every way I could possibly visualize crashing. And at some point I'd just be like, well, my brain's not playing ball with me right now. My body is going to have to prove my brain wrong. And I just had to go, okay, pedal as fast as I can, push through the bottom of the hill and push off the takeoff as even as possible. And then that, like from that point on, will be what it'll be. And hopefully my body can prove to my mind that I can do it. But it won't be until I've finished that I've shown it. Yeah. And so like having seen myself crash like 10 different ways, I clip into my pedals and I start pedaling down the hill, riding towards this jump I've just seen myself crash a million times on, and fly through the air and land and ride away. Not crashed. Like I made it. And there was a few times where that happened where pretty much I'd land and I'd pull on the brakes and pull over to the side of the track and cry. Because like I'd put the fear of crashing to the side to just be like, I have to trust my body. My brain wants to think of every way I could fail, and I just have to know that like the chance of me failing are there, of course, but also the chance of me being successful is way greater. I've done this a long time. I've done this jump many times. Like my body knows what to do. I just have to trust that. And yeah, those moments were the hardest. And a lot of time you'll be like, I just want to feel confident before I do something. And it's like, it sucks, but you won't feel confident until you've done it and you've proven to yourself that you can. And so those moments are really like gold to go, like, yeah, you want to feel good about something before you try it. Well, unless you've done it a million times, you're not going to feel confident. You're not going to believe you can until you've done it a million times. And so, yeah, it's just those things or those moments where it's just emotional to put that fear and the thoughts of failure aside and just do it anyway. It's just like, it's a lot.
Yeah. There's a quote that Jessie Smith suggested that you've shared with her.
Yeah.
Which is, you've just got to be brave for a few seconds.
Yeah.
Is that what you're speaking to there?
Exactly. Yeah. So Jessie Smith won a junior world title in BMX. I helped her when she was, well, a little kid basically, right through her career. But yeah, so she's like family in a way. But yeah, you just got to be brave for like 3 seconds. That's how quick something in BMX is. And so from the top of the hill, clipping in to riding as hard as I can down the hill and committing, like, I don't have to be brave for a minute. I have to be brave for 3 seconds. Go.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
In episode 211, we talked to Steve Williams. This was a real cool one for me. I got the golf bug big time about 3 years ago, and he had been on our dream podcast list for years. We spoke about his incredible relationship with Tiger Woods and the success they both enjoyed when he was caddying for him for over 10 years.
So those first few years are a whirlwind, and I alluded to earlier, there was one moment where there was an important putt and you spoke up and your read was different to Tiger's and you were right. Was that foundational in the relationship?
Oh, absolutely. So, when you caddy for Tiger, and when I first sat down and discussed the job with him, obviously his goal was to eclipse Jack's record of 18 major championships. That's what he was setting out to do. I mean, it's a lofty goal, but
and sorry, for context, he got one at that stage, right?
Correct. Yeah. So the first year I caddied from started off with him, he wasn't playing very good at all. So he didn't do very well at the Masters, the US Open, or the Open Championship. So 1999 was going to be another year. So 96 he's captured the Masters, and 97 went by, didn't win one. 98 went by, and this was the last one in 99. And I'm starting to feel a little bit of the pressure as well. This guy's just got to win major championships. That's what he's built around. And it was at the Medina Club in Chicago, and it was actually one of the courses where we'd played some practice rounds there before the tournament with Michael, and Michael was a member there. So we came to the 16th hole there, par 3, and Tiger at one point, I believe he might have had a 4 or 5 shot lead, and it was down to 1 now over Sergio Garcia. And Tiger had a putt. He missed the green on the 16th. He chipped it up there about 6 feet or something like that, and he had a putt there. And he said, "Steve, can you read the putt?" And he said, "I got it inside left," which is whatever. They gave me the read, and I distinctly remember when you play a practice round, caddies go around and put tees in the ground where they think pins might be during the week. So on each green where the hardest hole location is. You won't know exactly where it's going to be, but you know it's going to be in that area. And I just seem to remember when he was practicing in that area where I'd put a tee down, I don't recall what day it was, that the ball was breaking more than what he was actually putting. I put the tee down and I noticed the first few putts, and he had the same putt, not exactly, but I just knew it break. And I just spoke up and said, "No, it breaks more than that. And it's outside the hole." He said, "You sure?" I said, "Yeah." And that's a defining moment, because it's the first major that he's had the chance to win a major that I'm caddying for him, and he's relying on something I've said to him. Now, if he misses that, he's not going to blame you, because he's gone, whatever. He knocks that in. He goes with my read, knocks it in, and that was a defining moment, because he's going to trust me all the time now, because it's the biggest moment that we've been involved in. And I was right, and he went on to win that. And that had he have not won that tournament in '99, who knows what would happen? But the floodgates just opened, and he went on in 2000 to 2005, just went on an absolute tear and played golf at a level that no one's ever seen before. But it may not, you don't know if it may not have happened if I'd ever had agreed with him. He missed that putt, didn't win that major championship. The drought was still on, and possibly could have created more pressure starting out in the 2000 season, but now he's got the second one on the board, which I always believe the second major is the hardest one to win, and that's why there's so many players only got one. The second one's the hardest one. So once you get past that second one, and he was rolling now. So that was like you said, that was a defining moment.
Just zeroing in onto the detail, when he turns to you and asks for your read, I know based on your preparation, you're confident on your call, but are you feeling the pressure and the nerves at that moment as well?
No, that's one thing I learned very early on. Peter Thompson, told me, "Steve, from the first hole to the 72nd hole, every hole's the same. You're not hitting the shots. You make the best call." I never felt the pressure. I mean, the only time I ever felt my ass puckering was when he was running out of golf balls at the US Open.
We need this story.
He's done it himself. He's got us there.
Okay, give us the Pebble Beach story.
Well, look, it's a long story, but I'll make it as short as I can. It's the US Open. Tiger won the 2000 US Open by 15 shots. Probably the greatest performance in major championship golf, but it nearly didn't happen. We came to the Friday plays delayed through fog, and we got to come back early Saturday morning. At that particular point in time, the way the setup at Pebble Beach was that the driving range was up at the polo fields, the putting greens down by the clubhouse, and the shuttles leaving from the resort to go out to where. So, given the tee time, there's not enough daylight to do everything. So Tiger elects to just go and hit balls and then take the shuttle out to the tee. So I put the clubs in his room on Friday night, go back out there on Saturday morning, I just pick them back up. It's a continuation of yesterday's round. I don't need to put anything in, new clubs, new balls, nothing in there. It's just a continuation. I just pick the bag up on my shoulder. He went to the range, hit a few balls, out we go onto the golf course. We stand on the 14th tee there to start the day. You're on the tee, 5 or 10 minutes before the siren goes to commence play, and I put my hand in the bag. It's only 3 balls. I thought, should be more than that.
How many should there be?
Oh, I think there should have been about 6. Always start.
How many do you have?
About 20.
It's not that they lose them, but they scuff them when they whatever. So the very first hole, the 14th hole, he hits it into the rough. Hits a great shot out of the rough onto the green. Scuffs the ball. Back then the balls were the materials that the balls were made of were a little bit softer than nowadays, and when they use a wedge and impart a bit of spin on the ball, it scuffed the ball, if you like. Make a scuff on it. And he walks off the green and he chucks it to this kid. And I'm thinking, fuck, I need to go and get that ball off this kid. But, you just can't do that.
That's not a great look.
It's not a great look. And this kid's showing his dad. It's early in the morning. He's showing his dad. It's got Tiger on the ball. He's just chuffed this kid. I think, we only got 2 balls left here. Not a big deal. Plays 15, 16, 17, all good. And we get to the 18th. Now, I'm thinking, do I say something here? But he's playing so good, I can't say anything, because it's a hole where you can hit it in the ocean or you can hit it out of bounds. It's not an easy driving hole, but he's playing good. At this particular time, he's leading the tournament by 9 shots. I can't say anything. What happens, he snipe hooks one into the ocean. One ball, give it 1 ball left, and he slams the club back on the bag. So I put the head cover back on, and I've got my hand firmly clasped. And he says, "Give us that fucking driver." No, hey, look, Tiger, maybe you're leading by 9. Just hit an iron down there. Give us that fucking driver. And now, it's the only time I felt my ass is puckering. It's like, Jesus, I'm not shaking my ass. It's fucking puckering. You only got 1 ball left. Anyway, hits it in the fairway. I was like, oh, thank God for that. On the 18th hole at Pebble Beach, there's a tree in the middle of the fairway. And we go down there. You can't see from the tee because it's still a bit foggy. Go down there. It's right. It's not. The tree's not going to impede the swing, but it's going to impede the line of the shot. And I'm thinking, I know what he's going to say. Yeah, what are you going to go? What do you think, Steve? And I'm going to say, just hit it under the tree and run it up short of the green. Somebody's going to go, no, I'm going to take a 3-wood and hit it way out over the bay and cut it over the water and bring it. Oh God. Anyway, he doesn't lose that ball. It's the last ball we hadn't played. Nothing said. On Sunday, finishes the tournament. It was a monumental occasion, 15-shot win in that. And then, you go into the scorer's hut and I would read his score out and he'd just check a score and it's all over. So I'm just standing outside. He's got to address the media and all this, that, and the other. But I stand there outside just to give him his watch and so forth. And he just said, what happened there yesterday on the, and I told him, and we've laughed for years and years and years because he had this great line that, if I don't play any good, you're going to be working for me at TW's car wash. And he said, well, but we nearly opened it right there, didn't we?
Yeah, what actually would, if he hit that last ball into the water, because it's a specialist Nike ball, right?
Correct.
He can't use someone else's. What happens?
So, if he's playing with somebody that's using the same ball, I can sneakily just go and say, hey, look, same ball. There's nothing to stop you doing that. But the other guy and the 2 guys in the group are playing a different ball. It's the last ball. It's all over. But,
it's done.
Yeah.
Done.
Disqualified. No, run out of golf balls.
Holy shit. That's the biggest story in golf.
And I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys. I'd be driving a truck around the North Island selling pine trees or something.
In episode 226, we talked to Loki legend Marius van der Poel. This man is built different. We got such great feedback from this show. He was a reluctant guest. He didn't want to come on and share his story, and that's why he did it, and it was gold. He talked in this clip about how difficult it is to get into the SAS and what that selection process looks like.
The selection process is 9 days in total. The first day is broken down into a series of military tests. So you've got a 2.4K run, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups. Then you've got an 8-kilometre pack march, fireman's carry, drag, rope climb, 6-metre wall, 6-metre ditch, and then an 8-kilometre run minus your pack. And then you've got to do I think it's about a 300-metre swim out, dive down, pick up some sand and come up with it. And then that's day one done. And then that's day one. And I guess the main thing that's probably quite crippling is that the rations as well. I think it's, going off the top of my head, it's like 5 baked beans, a slice of bread, I think a sausage maybe for breakfast. And
5 individual baked beans.
5 individual baked beans, yeah.
A slice of
white bread and sausage, I think.
Like what? Like fuck.
That's for each day.
That's for each day, yeah. Yep. And it's obviously not a lot to fuel the body when you're going for that sort of rigorous training. And so day 2 and 3 and 4, they're pretty much similar in an aspect of you've got your pack on, which is 35 kgs, and you're just navigating a route over hilly terrain with a set time limit on that as well. And again, that food and sleep deprivation is all meted out very carefully. You'll find yourself doing some pretty average tasks to keep yourself up at night. Like reading like a navigation booklet backwards, word by word, around the room. And then day after that, there's jerry's, and so that's jerry cans. We went out west on the west coast there, and front guy's carrying 2 jerry cans, and everyone else after him's carrying 1. And you just take turns. It's probably the biggest mind fuck I've ever come across. There's no finish line, so it doesn't matter how hard you're going, you're there. There's nothing you can do about it really.
How heavy are the jerry cans?
So they're 20 kgs each.
And what do you mean no finish line? Like when does it finish?
It's set on time, and so you're just going, and you don't have watches, and it's a decent amount of time that you're out there, and you're just going up a sand dune, and the instructor goes down there, and you're just following this guy, and it goes into night time, and he's just following this real reed silo. And
Jamie talked about this. This was the one that broke it because he failed the first time, right? So what is going through your head? Like how are you surviving this?
I was pretty lucky. I had some guys that I really respected from my infantry battalion. One of them happened to be one of my instructors and Matt's instructors on core training. And he's someone that I just sort of put up on a bit of a pedestal. And he just came. I was in the same group, so he's sort of broken down into even groups of about 5 or so. And being in the same group with him, he was just like, "How are you going, bro?" I was like, "I'm fucked." He's like, "Yeah, mate." It's just like, if you'll do it, I'll do it. And then that was quite a turning point for me, having someone that I put up on a pedestal like that come and say something like that to me. I was like, "Oh, sweet." It's cracked on.
Where's it sore with the jerry? Is it your shoulders? Is it your body? Is it just your mind?
Yeah, everything. It's, I wouldn't say it's not like an unimaginable pain to quit on the spot, but it's just quite a sustained amount of time under that amount of pain. So it's like you're not wanting to quit because of that pain, but it's just the timeline that you're under that level of pain is pretty uncomfortable.
Jamie sort of spoke about it's the mind that goes. It's your mind. It's your thoughts that go. I can't do this anymore. Long before your body breaks down. So is that the hardest element of it? Is defeating the dialogue that's going on in your own head?
Yeah. And so I guess I got to the point. So after the jerry cans, there's 2 days where you're behind enemy lines as such, and you're being chased by enemy party as well, and you're not allowed to use the roads, and you've got a series of checkpoints to make it all the way through.
I always thought that was an urban legend. that on the they get dropped somewhere and you've got to sneak back into town without being detected. But that's essentially it.
Yeah. And at the end of that, you're pretty crippled, and then they throw in a little 60-kilometre pack march at the end to top it all off. And during that march, I got quite a low point really, and I got to the point where I was thinking, well, if there's a gun to my head and someone said, if you can't take another step, I'll shoot. Could I take another step? And the answer was always yes. And that was just, a reoccurring question that I posed to myself for 60 kilometers. And yeah.
Is that a scenario that has popped into your head while you're doing that, or is that something that you've pre-thought about beforehand?
Yeah, that happened on that scenario. Yeah. So that was, I also had written down like a little notepad of all the reasons why I was doing it. And I was like, I wanted to do it so bad and get through. And having come so far and then to not make the cut would have just been, soul crushing. So I was like, fuck, I've got to do this because I don't want to come back again, but I will if I have to. So
how many people drop out? Like what percentage of people drop out at the jerry can part and as the weeks progress? Like how many are left at the end?
Yeah, so it's quite a big culling point at the Jerry's. I think most selection courses run around 50 guys, and then you'll sort of drop around, I don't know, maybe 10, 15, and then you'll probably lose over half at the Jerry's. And once you've passed the Jerry's, most of the guys crack on after that.
Yeah. What's the last days look like?
So that's 60 kilometer one, and that's takes a while. But yeah, you sort of, for me, the checkpoint started off, from what I remember, quite evenly spaced, and so like, oh yeah, sweet, I'm making good ground, and then I don't know if it's by design or not, but then they stop becoming so routine, and then you're like, oh, I'm due to hit a checkpoint soon. You're like, fuck, maybe I'm going quite slow here. And it's just this constant mind fuck all the way through, really, because it gets dark and you start seeing things. And
do you watch any of those shows that they have on TV now where they put celebrities through that sort of stuff and they're fucking getting berated and like, do you watch that stuff?
No, not really.
I just wondered how close that is, because it's like, are you also getting like the instructors and stuff verbally giving you like quit now, Marius, you fuck all. Like, are they giving it to you as well, or do they just leave you in silence to kind of just deal with it?
Yeah, they just leave you, and I think that's almost worse because it leaves a lot of second guessing, especially when you're under fatigue. So especially like during the navigation exercises, you'll say your mag bearing, your distance, time taken, and they'll just look at you like, okay, you're like, well, is it right? Was it wrong? Okay, it's like, fuck, right. Well, I'll just follow, crack on, and then they'll follow you, and you're like, follow me because I did a right decision or a bad decision. And it's I reckon it's worse having just that. The approach is firm, fair, and unfriendly, really. So
you're 21 at this point, right?
Yeah.
How many other 21-year-olds would pass? Like, how rare is it for someone so young to pass selection?
Yeah, I don't think there's that many. I'm definitely not the youngest. There's definitely been quite a few who've been younger than me, but I think the typical age is probably like mid to late 20s. I think they get through.
And what's the feeling like how does it get signaled that you have passed and ended, and what's the feeling like with the sort of camaraderie with the other guys around you that you've all done this together?
I mean, for my mate Matt, that was pretty awesome to have gone through that with him. Like, we had done a trip to Solly's with him and did all the training as well. So that was that meant a lot. But then I guess a lot of the other guys, it's not a huge team building exercise. You're you're an individual on that selection course. So the camaraderie was there, but it wasn't amazingly tight. It was the camaraderie comes more from the training afterwards. And I remember one of the instructors coming up to us after selection, be like, "Oh, well done." We're like, "Oh yeah, thanks." He's like, "That was the easy part." And I was like, "Oh fuck, he's just saying that." But he was right.
Just on that, so you, again, referencing the Jamie Pinnell episode, you do the selection and then there's a period of training. But immediately after selection, what's the physical aftermath of that? Do you go into a cave for a week and like just recover, or are you sinking piss, eating pizzas? Like, what does it actually look like?
Yeah, so we got shipped back down to Burnham because Matt and I were from 2nd 1st Battalion down there. And we had a pretty cruisy week or so at work because we were hobbling around. I just remember waking up the night after we'd finished the 60K, and we're in the 12-man barrack rooms there, and I saw Matt. I was awake because my whole body was just throbbing. And I saw Matt, hobble past to go for a piss, and he just stopped at the end of my bed, not because it was my bed, but just stopped and he just looked down and just try and muster the energy to sort of carry on and go to the bathroom. And we just belt-fed Subway and pancakes, I think, for about a week straight afterwards. And our legs just ballooned. I don't know if that was, just swelling really after all that. But
In episode 214, we talked to Kiwi physio Dr. Jo Brown about how she met Noah Lyles and helped him become the fastest man in the world.
And Noah Lyles is coach. He coaches Pure Athletics, which is basically all the best Adidas athletes in the US. Not all, but a lot of top Adidas camp. And he was having some issues with athletes through COVID, lots of injuries. And actually, Johan Blake's ex-agent had been asked by this coach saying, hey, do you know anyone? And he's like, I only know 2 people in the world that can help you. And I was one of them. He's like, I can ask her, give her a call, see what she says. And I was actually about to go with Australian Beach Volleyball to help them qualify for the Olympics and get this random phone call from this American number answer, and it's this coach, and he's like, so what do you do different? What else are you different? So I'm trying to explain. It was a really good conversation because I was trying to explain what I did differently and how I wasn't just a physio and I did biomechanics and all this type of things. But I don't think he even realised what I was saying at the time until we started working together. But he said, look, can we meet? So I was with the bobsleigh, had 1 day off in 3 months, and I committed to making this meeting happen with this coach. And it was a real interesting time. From the moment I had that phone call, I knew I was meant to connect with this coach. I didn't know what I was chasing. It was like going fishing and not knowing what you're going to catch, right? But I took the day, went and saw him, met him, met his athletes, and I'm very much about values aligning. And I just liked the way he ran his camp and who he was and what he stood for. So I was like, okay, I can work with this guy. And he's like, so when can you come back? I was like, really good question, because Australia's still locked down, but I'll see what I can do. And he's like, well, if you can come back by Easter, that's when we start running fast, when we need someone like you. I'm like, okay, cool. And then the world was starting to open up, so I could leave Australia. So I booked to go for 2 weeks to the Noah's camp. And it was a really weird thing because I already knew there was something I had to do there. Didn't know what it was. There was no financial backing. I had a free flight that I could use. I paid for my own accommodation, and I went backing myself to create an opportunity. I didn't even know what the opportunity could be. At this time, Noah Lyles was, yes, an athlete, but no one knew who he was. He wasn't the best. He wasn't the fastest man on the planet, nothing like that. And, yeah, I just backed myself. And in that time, Noah had been working with someone individually, and then they weren't there or they were sick or something. And I'd been working with a few of the other athletes, and he had a groin niggle, and he comes over and he says, hey, Joe, will you have a look at my groin? I normally have someone, but they're busy, or not here, so can you have a look? And I was, yeah, sure, no worries, and had a look, and I said that it was not coming from his groin, it was coming from his back, and he's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And he's like, oh, you got really good hands. And I'm like, yeah, I do. And I was like, yeah, I'm one of the best in the world at what I do.
Yeah.
And with him there, I knew, and it's with any of the greats, you have one opportunity to show up and stand in your light. And if I'd said, oh, yeah, I'm okay, he would have gone, I don't want okay. I want to be the best in the world. So if you're not the best, I don't want you. So I knew I had that moment with him. And the work I did that day, then he was like, oh, can I see you today? Can I see you tomorrow? And at the end of the 2 weeks, and I always remember this, he's like, oh, Joe, when do you go? And I'm like, oh, tomorrow. And he's like, oh, we need to have a meeting. And I was like, okay. And then we had this meeting, and he sat on like the treatment table, and I was sitting on this chair. So he was sitting above me. And even before he was the fastest man on the planet, he's always had that presence. Like, he oozes greatness. He's just that human. And I was like, oh. But then I realized that he's oozing that and I ooze that and fight for that. So what can we do together? And he said, oh, well, me and my brother have been talking, and we need someone like you, like, to travel with us and work with us and try and help us stop us getting injured. And I'm like, he's like, my agent will call you. And I was like, okay. And then it started from there. But what started as him thinking that I was going to stop him getting injured become hunting down his weaknesses, hunting down his elephants, and actually closing his performance gap. So he was getting closer and closer to his true potential.
How does he respond to that critique of what he's got?
How do you approach that?
So someone like Noah is the kind of guy that you give him a critique and he's like, what? How do I make it better? Like, give me more feedback. How do we fix that? Like, is there... And they might deny it to start, but then if you've got any proof at all, they're like, okay, show me, how do we fix it? How do we fix it? And so with him, it actually started with me noticing his left foot weakness and that he didn't have much of a calf raise, and a calf raise is an indication of a lot of things in strength. And if your foot is deforming when you run, you're losing power to the ground. So it was a huge biomechanical issue, and that was the biggest reason in my mind that his starts were so poor. So if we could get that, we're going to be like halfway there at getting his starts. And I proved this to him in the gym, and I said, this is normal. This is what I can do. You do the other side and see. And he's like, what? It's the same, isn't it? I'm like, no, man. And then so I measured it. I was like, okay, so this is 6 centimeters. Normal's like double that. And you're almost double that on the other side, but both are pretty average. And he's like, what, average? And once again, just like me, he doesn't deal with average. So, and that was a work in progress from there. And then we just went hunting down all the little pieces of the puzzle for him.
The pieces of the puzzle, are they in a textbook?
No.
So where do they come? Where do the pieces of the puzzle come from?
They come from, like I said before, with the NBA player and looking at their best performance, right? So what does best performance look like? For Noah Lyles, what are his strengths? When he's running his best, what does that look like? Then what are the little weaknesses and flaws that are there that we can then put back together again and build up to execute his best performance? And so, and as we mentioned earlier, for me, that isn't just physical, so it's the understanding as well. So a lot of what I did with Noah and a lot of the athletes I work with is getting them to really understand their bodies and how their body and their mind work together to deliver their best performance.
Is that changing technique, or is that stuff in the gym? Like, I'm sort of hunting really for the detail.
Yeah. So it's
not
all
many people
those...
know this, but Stephen challenged me to start sprinting on one of our other shows recently. So I need to
like a rollerblading start.
No, I said wide start. I said you got to go wide start and then narrow into sort of coming to.
So
maybe we can go to a track after this.
Yeah. Oh my god, that would be a great episode. Great episode. So it's all those things. It's being able to. So for me, having a biomechanics background, I know what good technique looks like. I know what angles he needs to execute. I know how far from his center of mass he needs to be putting his foot down to apply force. I know which muscles he needs to be able to activate in what sequence to be most effective in terms of producing power down the track. I know where he's going to lose power from the track. I know what exercise in the gym that he needs to do to be able to strengthen, but I also know the activation exercises he needs to be able to do before he does that in order to be able to get the most out of his muscles, as well as, if this thing's tight, then that's going to limit the capacity for that muscle to work properly, as well as if he doesn't understand, he's not going to be able to deliver it or trust the process either. So the understanding is really key. And Noah has a big team, and he has, people that work on him physically, people that work on him mentally. He has a chef, there's lots of people working around, but we all have our strengths in order to work together to execute his best performance. And my role was almost a little bit like the glue of like being able to see the bigger picture. So probably the one person in the team that has the skill set that can understand the importance of the mental side and language and what he says to himself and how we talk to him and how to hold space for that best performance in the moment, which we mentioned before, but then from a physical perspective, understanding his own body and being able to have the correct processes in place so that he can, one, train his body properly, but then be able to execute when it counts in the moment. And that's a huge, big process as well.
It's one of the most comprehensive answers I think we've had. Yeah, answer your question, Jay?
I'm just waiting for the notes after this so I can get down the track. And
there's a book. There's a course coming as well.
I don't think any part of sport fascinates me quite so much as the start line of the 100-metre final at the Olympics.
Oh, it starts before the start line. It's even the walkout.
Well, that whole part. I'm wondering what part of that process you're involved. Like Noah comes out and he's flying and he's jumping around and it looks like he's exerting all this energy. And then it's mind games. You're sort of like lined up against the other fastest men in the world. And it's all part of it, right? Like this is all playing into who's going to win by that fraction of a second. But what are you involved in that part of?
Not so much. So he has another person that works with him and does like a mental plan for the race. So I don't necessarily do the mental plan of what he's actually planning to execute from a mental side of things. My role's more getting him ready physically in the right energy and the right activation process to be able to come out and feel like he can jump as high as he wants, run as fast as he wants, and knows and trusts the process to be able to execute. So a lot of my job is done way before he gets to the start line. It's in that process. And a lot of it, and it sounds corny, but a lot of it is trusting your body and what you're capable of, because you know you've ticked all the boxes that you just believe you can execute your best performance, and the power of belief is huge.
Who's the last voice that he hears before he goes? Is it you or is it somebody else before he goes
Before
out?
he goes, normally it would be his coach. He'll normally walk him like down the corridor, but he would normally, when I was there with him, spend like most of his time like around me and my table. And I see this quite often with athletes that sometimes, and this isn't necessarily Noah, but sometimes their coach can like stress them out a little bit pre-race. So I'm kind of like that calming influence, and I have always talked about holding space for people's best performance, and it's almost a gift that I've developed over time, and the Jamaicans called me out on it in a good way. Like they just recognised it, right? That a lot of their top athletes wanted to spend time with me just before they go and race. And I think that comes a lot from belief and actually believing that they can execute their best performance on that day. And a lot of people kind of overcrowd athletes and can't read their body language, or whether they need to be, lit up or pulled back down again. And Noah and I had a process that was very much nothing even needs to be said. It was just like a look in the eye, and it's like a tap on the shoulder, 4 deep breaths or whatever, So it was just being so in tune with each other and what he needed at the time to try and execute his best performance. It's pretty cool.
In episode 231, we talked to former All Black sports psychologist Gilbert Enoka. This is a small clip about his best Gilbertisms from the book he just released, Become Unstoppable. But another one, go and listen to the full episode, because this is a little taste. The whole 2 hours is packed with wisdom like this. Okay, so a couple of Gilbertisms. The performance triangle, so skill set, mindset, structure, and everyone thinks the most important to a skill set and mindset, but it's actually structure. And you give a really good example of how this can look in a game. So say a player wants to punch the ref in the face after a bad decision, and you have a structure in place. So structure 1, walk away from the official. Structure 2, connect with a teammate and ask a question, what are you seeing? And 3, assess the situation, draw breath, move on to the next thing. So it's like if you've got the structure in place, then it stops you making the rash decision, right? It's just like, it makes so much sense when you lay it out like that.
Well, it's a structure that shifts the mindset. Like a lot of people think, the referee makes a decision and I have this rise of emotions. And what we've learned is that you can only win when your mind is stronger than your emotions. So when the referee makes a decisions like that, the emotions become the king. It's hence the chapter on the jewel within. And so how do I win the jewel? How do I ensure you can't stop your emotions? And we don't want to, by the way. We just got to learn to manage them. So what do? I do something with my attention. So physically I move away, then I take my attention to talk to somebody else. And while you're doing that, then the amount of intensity drops. And then you come back and you connect to the situation, and you've got a greater sense of control. And it's funny, I do sessions all around the world, and I ask them that question. Okay, so all are important. Yep. We want to get them all aligned. Yep, that's great. I've said one of them I've found to be a superpower. What do you reckon it is? I always start with skill set, and no hand goes up. I said, well, what the hell are you doing all the skills for? And then I go, mindset, every hand in the room goes up. And then you go to structure and you have that conversation. And the issue is if people are trying to change their mindset through the mindset window, you can't. It's too hard. It's too hard. You need a structure. You need to do something else to shift that. Once you get that, and then you understand the other part of the lethal cocktail being the discipline piece, then there's nothing in life you can't get through. You think of all the tough times in your own life, structure and discipline will get you through. And it's kind of cool to know, and I just find myself even now saying, if something's really difficult, I say, right, what's the structure? When I'm introducing a skill, like the question you asked before about a mental skill and keeping them simple, I always say, what's the structure I'm going to use to put it in front of the boys? And once I go through that lens, then how am I going to catch them? What do I want to teach them? How am I going to test them? And that little phrase then gives me a structure to be able to deliver it to the group. So it's kind of cool.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Whinge up.
Really cool. I think that's really cool.
Whinge up, but don't whinge down.
Yeah. Gosh, I wish I'd learned that earlier. I kind of talk a lot about, everyone vents about their problems, and what we try to do is get people to understand that they need to vent about their joy, about the great things that are happening in their lives. So if you vent about your problems all the time, then you whinge all the time. So people get around a table like this at Smoko, and the first thing they do, they start complaining about the boss or one of their colleagues, and it becomes a cancer if everyone does that, especially if it's left unchecked. And so we encourage people, whinging's okay, but you can only whinge up, you can't whinge down. So I can't whinge about the person below me or even to the people beside you, really. And that's why I use Steve Hanson's quote, which he always sort of go, moaner, complain to the moanee. He'd say,
It's not a bad shag.
It's a beautiful one.
Yeah, that's a good
and he could do it beautifully, but they're all, that's taught up in the grey person, the ones that have nothing to say in a meeting, but when they get outside in the cafe or in the bar, they're the experts on everything. Those are the cancers that kill a culture. And they're the standards that people have got to go, stop. No, stop. Don't do that. Don't say that. You go and talk to him. And the moment you got that self-policing going on, then the culture's vibrant, and it's moving positively.
What does "don't take the sausage" mean?
Beautiful phrase, isn't it? Like we had at the book launch was beautiful because I had some of my volleyball boys there, and I knew when they'd read that they'd love it, because I played volleyball and I travelled the world with volleyball, but we paid for every trip we went on. To this day, I don't begrudge a cent of it. But boy, some of the philosophies we developed were just lifelong. That phrase ended up influencing great environments like in the All Blacks. It basically means that look after someone else before you look after yourself. So, if there were only 2 sausages in a plate on this table with the 3 of us, then we'd be fighting to make sure that we were the one that missed out. So don't take the sausages, put other people's needs amongst yours. And when you're serving the wider cause and each other, then you create a wonderful culture within the group. And I think we talk a little about, getting into cars. People like to ride shotgun, and people are going for the back door to try and get in there. So they don't actually get the best seat. Where other teams go in there, and some of the people just expect to walk into the best seat themselves. So, it's a good old little phrase, and people would just say, take the sausage, and it's just a synergy to look after the others before you put yourself and take rather than actually give to the environment.
I love that one. Wishbone, backbone, funny bone?
Yes. You don't need to pay millions and thousands and hundreds of dollars on personal development plans that a lot of people do. We want things that grab, so you only need 3 bones in your body. You need a wishbone, so dream big. You need a backbone, understand there's going to be obstacles along the way, and don't be afraid. And if you've not got any obstacles, you're probably not on the right track. And then you've got to have fun along the way. And the only proviso is don't grow a wishbone where you should be growing a backbone, because wishing activates hoping, and hoping doesn't work in parachuting or birth control. So it ain't going to work for when you want to achieve something in sport. So.
I've got one. Preserve the core, but disrupt the edges.
Yeah. That phrase sort of came from a piece of research that was conducted, which looked at examining the reason why some businesses coming onto the landscape didn't survive very long. You know, they'd come on and disappear. And yet there's another group of organisations that have blown the candles out on their 100th birthday and they look like they're going to be there forever. And so they asked, the research said, well, what are these centennial? They called them centennial groups. What do they have that the other ones don't have? And they did those two things. One is they preserved the core. They understood who they were and they didn't mess with the core. And then they send waves of disruption around the edges. So innovative ways to keep growing. So in the All Blacks, the core is the jersey, the black jersey. It's black. That defines you. The silver fern unites you. We don't mess with that. And that's why we had a lot of fights over, not fights, discussions over the commercial stuff that appears on the jersey. You look around the world, lots of teams now are smothered with so much commercialisation that they've lost their identity. And I think that's messing with the core. And so we have to make sure we don't do that. But how do we market? How do we get innovative in the game? How do you get 1,000% improvement? Well, you improve 1,000 things by 1%. That's disrupting the edges.
Is it innovation? Did I get that right? 10% of everybody's budget in the All Blacks was dedicated towards innovation?
That's in Wayne Smith's day. He put every department was charged with that. Spend 10% of your time and 10% of your budget on innovation. When you think of what we talked about before about being here and not following, but actually getting everyone following you, I don't think many teams would do that, but that's what contributed to us having that gap, maintaining that gap. And it's just, people think it's wasted resource and if you're trimming the budget, what you've got to do. But in a sport like ours, you've got to have your people growing and not just doing it plastically to make out, put you on this course and you're going to get better at it, you know.
It might not be an example, but is the club night an example of an innovation that you introduced into, or that was introduced into the All Blacks environment?
Wayne Smith introduced that into the All Black environment. And we poo-hooed it for about 3 years. It took him 3 years before everyone took him seriously. Then we put it in, and every team now around the place is doing it. You know, another one of just being ahead of people, and I'd kind of. Question I reflected on, what is it that we were doing that no one else was doing when I finished, in terms of coming back and, how we use the legacy group and doing those sort of things. We're starting to move into some of that space. But the club rooms was certainly that. Boy, do we have some fun in there. No work, you can't talk shop. So you had to put a muzzle on a few of the coaches, to stop them from sidling up and have a look at this, But it was a fun night. A few beers, a bit of a yarn.
Am I right in thinking club jerseys to connect you back to where you started your journey?
Yeah. So you have you wore a club jersey of origin. So first club that you played for, which became a bit of a problem later on because a lot of people don't play for the clubs. They go straight into the professional circuit, and so pick one that's close. But always connected back to a club of some sort for them.
In episode 239, we talked to Ryan Fox. This was a real pinch me moment for Seamus and I. Ryan took time out of his busy schedule to drive to Hamilton and spent the day with us in studio. We did a little chipping competition afterwards, and it was like, holy, how is this our job? In this clip, he talks about what it really takes to win on the PGA Tour, which he did in 2025, and he speaks probably with more insight and depth than any other interview he did across the year.
There's nothing like playoff golf, is there? Like, I know you've probably talked about this a lot, but I'd love just to get your sort of highlights of it. I reckon the whole of New Zealand, because you start getting messages, Foxy's in the playoff. And because it went so many holes, I feel like just everyone was just united behind you. And there were so many ups and downs. It was a roller coaster, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was like playoffs are kind of weird. Like, I feel like you've got it, like it's a go for it mentality in a playoff. Like it's the one, like if you f it up, the worst you can finish a second. Like, it's not like if you come down the last and you're trying to win a golf tournament, make double, you can finish like 8th if it's real bunched. Whereas, like, you may as well have a crack in a playoff because the benefit of pulling it off is far outweighs the little mistake. But yet, like, you know, you finish as well. Like, say, I know Canada, I finished a hole that putt to get in the playoff. So everything's kind of going. And then you just, like, literally turn around and get whipped straight back out in a cart. And then, you know, Sam Burns, on the other hand, has been sitting in the clubhouse for like an hour and a half or longer. Obviously, he's probably gone to the range and hit some balls and re-warmed up again. But he's an hour and a half from playing golf. And I've just finished and gone from the high of, like, I've got myself in a playoff. And then, oh shit, I got to go again. And I think, like, my brain was a bit fried the first hole. Didn't play the first hole very well. Sam missed he should have put me out of my misery that first hole. Like, he's a great putter. I'd basically given him that 5 or 6 footer that he had, and, you know, was like, oh.
One of his lads' chat was hammering him after missing that putt.
I tell you what, if it was my lads' chat, I would have copped it. I know that. But, like, it was just like one of those, okay, yeah, we get to go again. It was like a little bit of a reset the second time. Like, okay, yep, we're good. And then I kind of stuffed up the second hole. I hit shitty. I tried to go at the green with a 3, but it probably wasn't a shot I felt that comfortable with. The back left flag, I had to draw it a little bit and kind of like fatted it out to the right. Got lucky to not go in the water. And then I had the chance to hold the putt to win. And then I left that short. And then the third playoff hole, we both had a mare. Like, they changed the pin, which is the first time they've done it on the PGA Tour. So it changed from back left pin to the front right. And it was like a weird change in dynamic for the hole. Like, it was probably a 10-yard difference in what it played. But the wedge shot was way easier to the back left pin. It was like, if you laid it up, the pin was in a bowl, it was into the wind, you could kind of spin it back down the slope and get it pretty close, but it was a pretty hard shot to get right if you're going at the green in 2. Whereas the front pin was more like you could spin it off the green into the water pretty easily, and it was dropped off to the right, and if you missed it a little right, it would run off the front of the green. And it was almost an easier shot to just get it up near the green and kind of chip it close. So that, like, we both had to lay out because we had bad drives the third playoff hole, and we both hit bad wedge shots in there. Sam spun it off the green, I missed it left and 2-putted. And then it was like an easy decision on that 4th playoff hole. Like, I had a good drive. It's like, I've got the yardage to get there. Like, it makes sense. Even if you hit it in the back bunker, it's probably an easier bunker shot than like a 100-yard wedge shot into the green and not quite knowing if it's going to spin or not. And that was probably the best shot I've ever hit in my life, that 3-wood in there on the 4th playoff hole. And then, again, Sam potentially let me off the hook a little bit with his first putt going miles by and then missing the one coming back. And the typical stupid thought you have in there is just, like, I've got 6 foot down the hill. Like, you should never, ever 3-putt that. But all you're thinking about, like, my hands are going like that. Like,
really?
Oh, yeah. But, like, it's certainly not the first time I've had it. Hopefully it's not the last time I've had it. You kind of know how to deal with it. And you're just like, you're just thinking, just don't be an idiot. And, like, I'm not really trying to hold that putt kind of thing. You just kind of like, start it online, get it, just dribble it down there. Even if it doesn't get there and it's this far short, it's fine. And then me being an idiot, I hit it, like, you know, that far past. And it was like standing over it was never an issue, but it was just far enough, like, I'm still going to mark this. And it was like that mental reset of, like, okay, bang, and then everything went a bit blurry from there.
How good.
That 3-wood, best shot of your career. Did you know as soon as you've hit it that it's the best shot, or are you kind of, when that's in the air, are you thinking this has got a chance? But
there was, like, there's still some luck involved in it, right? Like, I hit the exact shot I wanted to hit, which is why I say it's probably the best shot I've ever hit. Like, I had to hit a cut. It had to go up because, like, if I bulleted it, it was going over the back of the green, and it was like, it's one of those ones, you hit it and you go, I just hope I've kind of calculated that right in my head. And there's no, like, calculation. It's like, whatever the wind is and this is how much it's going to take off. That's not.
What is the thought process before you hit that shot? Like, that'll do.
I don't have, like, some guys literally almost can play it a yardage, right? And you'll hear caddies be like, okay, it's 165, but it's playing 180. And they can just have it as a hit 180 shot and hope they've calculated it right. That's not me. Like, I'm just like, here's the wind. This is what I feel. Okay, this is going to be the club. And that was it. I remember talking to my caddy I don't think there was much of a conversation there, but it was like we had 235 into the wind. And I just looked at him and goes, I can't get 2 iron there, can I? And he goes, no. I was like, 3 would got to take a bit off it. He's like, yep, done. That was just hit a cut. Like I generally hit a cut and it was like, okay, and as soon as I hit it, I was like, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I flushed the pants off it. And it was like, at that point, you're just like, I just don't want a gust of wind, or you don't want there to be a lull, because either or is like, it's water or back bunker. And I think I kind of leant a little bit in the air, going like, and in my head I'm like, this is either perfect or it's going to land on that front bank and it's going to go on the water. And it obviously I couldn't see it; was kind of hazy. And then I like heard the crowd go nuts.
Then the All Whites go ballistic.
Yeah, and then like it was kind of cool too. I don't know how many people were out there, but like I felt like everyone there was kind of barracking for me. All I heard was go Foxy, whatever. And everyone just went batshit crazy when that landed. And then I kind of like walked up a few yards and I could see it. And I'm like, oh, damn, okay, yeah, that was pretty good.
We were going crazy in here. Like, I feel like everyone was. But I want to ask, when you tap the putt in and win, what's going through your head? Is it the success of winning the tournament? Is it the prize money? Is it just everything you've worked so hard for to get the championship? Like, and what does it look like after that putt goes in?
It's the biggest thing is like it's like the prize money doesn't come into it. Like the prize money is the thing you check the next day and you're like, oh yeah, okay, that was pretty nice.
Do they pay out in 24 hours?
You pay out in like 3 or 4 days, I think.
That's still pretty good. That's a good turnaround from a day's work. A day's work.
But like, it's a little bit of like the satisfaction of winning is pretty good, but it doesn't last that long. But it's like the combination of everything you've done. Like that's what, like that stuff means a lot. Like, you know, I've worked hard to get to this point, and then also like I get a lot of satisfaction from like doing stuff under pressure, like hitting the right shots and doing the right things under pressure. Like that seems to mean like you almost get more satisfaction, like, you know, hitting that 3-wood when it means a lot to hit that. You get more like the satisfaction of that's like almost more than the winning side of it, even though the winning is the end result of it. It's like, you know, coming down the stretch with a lead and hitting all the shots and achieving that goal of winning. That's like the thing that gets you there. It's not weirdly not the actual winning part of it. Like it's really hard to describe, but like I know for me, like when I've got a chance to win a golf tournament, everything gets simplified, which I wish I could get to this point way earlier in a tournament than like Sunday afternoon. But it much more becomes, I want to hit it there. This is the shot I want to hit, and just hit it and kind of not worry about it. Like you still got nerves and you're still trying to get rid of the bad thoughts in your head, but it becomes less about how, like thinking about a golf shot or a like setup thought or anything. It's just like, okay, I need to hit it there. This is what I need to hit. Like it becomes a simple process. And that's like, I find it really hard sometimes to get in that place without the external pressure of it.
In episode 202, we talked to Sean Fitzpatrick about keeping the All Black legacy alive and his best Jonah Lomu stories.
I think being an All Black is such a great honour. And it's still an honour, and that's a job for us now as custodians, really, is to make sure that legacy continues. You know, and JK and I being away and going to the All Black Games in the autumn is really important, just to sit on the outside and then look in and, you know, see if the Wallace Satitis of the world understand the legacy, you know, the Brian Lahores of the world. Like for me growing up, you know, to have Brian Lahore as my under-21 coach, to have Colin Mead as my under-21 coach was just like, wow. We'd sit around in a circle, you know, at night and just listen to stories that these great men would tell us, which is important that we now pass this on to the next generation.
Do you ever stop and think about yourself in the same light as you thought about those luminaries?
Well, we are getting to that age
now. I mean, you are.
We're working our way up the tree, which it's important. You know, Zinni and I went to the club night on the Tuesday before the All Blacks played England in London, and Zen and I sat up the front like Colin Meads and Brian Lahore, and just told stories about our time with being All Blacks. And it's important. I think it's important to make sure that the Dave Gallaghers of the world are remembered. The first All Black captain ever. For me, that's really important. We are working our way up the tree. And what I love also is that, although I haven't been to many lately, is the All Black reunions they have, that they have one a year. And that's for everyone. It's not for the 1987 World Cup team or the 2011 World Cup team. It's about All Blacks and people that were around, whether you be a coach or a physio, just come together once a year and just have a chat and, remember how great that jersey is.
Your career, it crossed over quite an interesting time with the game going professional. But one anecdote I'd heard is that, like, you used to get billeted out when you're with the All Blacks, and there's stories of, you.
I think it was only once.
Was it once?
Yeah.
One time, yeah. But All Blacks getting billeted. When was that?
That was at the World Cup in '87.
Yeah.
It was after that, obviously the turmoil of the Cavaliers, and, New Zealand didn't really have a love affair with the All Blacks at that World Cup until we started getting around the communities. And, you look at the opening game, I think it was 13,000 people, 14,000 people at Eden Park for the opening game of the World Cup against Italy. And then Brian Lahore, who was a coach, had basically said that, we need to take the game back to the communities. And so all our trainings were at schools, and after we played Argentina in our last pool game in Wellington, we were going down to Christchurch to play Scotland in the quarterfinal. And woke up on Sunday, heading off to the airport, and BJ said, boys, we're going over to my local pub and over the Ramatukas and into Lakeview pub in Ekatahuna. We're like, well, just have a bit of a Sunday, a few pints. And off we go. And up over the Ramatukas. And as we approach the Lakeview pub in Ekatahuna, there's all these utes outside, bales of hay, barking dog, kids everywhere. And we go into the pub and it's just full of people, and mums and dads and their kids. And I'm like, oh, God. So anyway, so Buck and Stevie bring the guitar and we start singing songs, having a great time. And then eventually BJ stands up and goes, right, boys, right, Fitzpatrick and Lowe, you're with the Going family. I'm like, what? And that was literally all. And then Lowe and I piled into their ute and we bounced off down the road singing, and we arrived home and, sleeping in single beds and just fantastic. And then, then all the families got together and that was brilliant. It was, I don't know if that would happen today, but
I don't think it would work today.
Quite a special memory. Just
the image of you and Lowe sharing.
Oh my gosh,
single beds, big All Black front rows.
I was just thinking of you bringing the All Blacks captain home to the Holloway household, and then just going, "What? 4 kids running around."
Yeah. But you think back to like Dad used to tell great stories about when they toured, in 53, 54 when they toured the UK. But they'd go away at Christmas because they'd be away for 4 or 5 months, and over Christmas they'd be in the UK. And Dad always talked about we used to stay on the Dilly in Piccadilly, the Dilly Hotel, and he'd say we'd go down to if you didn't have a family to go to by the 24th, you'd go down on Christmas Day down to the foyer of the hotel, and there'd be families there to take All Blacks home for dinner and stay for 2 or 3 days. So these All Blacks would be just around the UK. Amazing. No telephones, no nothing, and some would turn up, some wouldn't come back. Different times. Yeah,
we've got a bit of a rule on this podcast. Anytime we have someone on who played with the late great Jonah, we try to get at least one story and a few little interesting insights. Like, what was it like having that man training and playing alongside you, and what was just the power and speed of the guy?
It was what I always say to people is that Jonah was probably the shyest man I'd ever met. Hugely humble, and expressed himself on the field. That was literally it. He just liked hurting people on the field. But he, as I said, very humble. For me, probably 93, when we saw him playing for the New Zealand secondary schools. That's the first time I'd ever met him. And while we were watching him playing in Australian secondary schools, before we played Australia at Carisbrook, he scored 4 tries off the back of the scrum. And we were like, who is that? And it was Jonah Lomu. And little did we know, in the space of, I think, 9 months, he'd be playing on the wing for the All Blacks. It's very sad because he's the only true global superstar we've ever had and will ever have, without question. And what's the amazing thing, he did that in the space of 5 games.
Yeah.
In the space of 5 games. In 96, he got dropped. In 96, who went onto the wing? We had Goldie, Cully came in, and Glenn Osborne moved to the wing. And Jonah was on the bench and played in the Wednesday team and was such an important part of that success of that tour. And I can still remember when we walked off Loftus Versfeld and after securing the series win, and they're leading a haka, all the boys that didn't strip and they had their number 1s on, was Jonah. Just so happy that we'd achieved that goal. So that sort of spoke volumes of the man.
I remember that haka. I remember seeing it. Yeah,
and their white shirts.
Yeah.
I mean, that was after the other iconic moment of you on Loftus Versfeld punching the ground at the achievement. I think that's one of the iconic sporting moments in New Zealand history.
Well, I think that what that showed, and the Lions. I know the Lions when they went there in '97. Geach and McGeechan, he showed footage of that, of Zinni just out cold, Olo Brown out cold, but that's what it took to beat them, because they just don't go away. They're the same, they're so similar to us. They just keep bashing on the door, and you think you've got them, and they keep them back, and so that's we just knew. I just knew if they'd equaled sort of half the series. Then, if we'd been 1-1 going to Ellis Park, we were never going to win. And to do that and to walk off, and the great Don Clark, who was living in South Africa at the time, I can still remember him hugging me in the tunnel. In those days, no one hugged each other, especially All Blacks. Yeah. And had tears coming down his face as he said, Sean, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing something that no other All Black team has ever done, to win a series in South Africa. I can die a happy man. And that's what it meant to, because a lot of teams had been to South Africa and hadn't achieved that. Because it's bloody hard.
Well, that was the best of sport for 2025. I just want to say massive thanks to everyone who's watched and supported the show this year. It means the world to Seamus and I. This is a bit of a dream run for us, to turn a hobby into your full-time job with your best mate and have the conversations we do and mix and mingle with the people that we do is just a dream come true. We're so excited for what the future holds. We've got big plans for next year, and we want to just bring you all of the best guests and do the best storytelling we can. Thank you so much for coming along with us on the ride. We're excited to have a break and then get back into things with gusto and passion in 2026. See you then.